Oh, hello there, and welcome back to the continuation of What If I Was Doctor Who's Showrunner. Of course, for context, I would watch the previous 5 videos before entering this one, especially the previous. So anyways, new showrunner being what? Meaning brand new era? Well, not exactly. Season E would obviously have some brand new things to it, but there would be some stuff that would be implemented for the obvious reason of keeping the fans of the previous era. Now, a big question on your mind right now would possibly be why Katie McGrath,
It's McGrath.
McGrath, was chosen by me to be the next Doctor. Well, it was based on her roles in Merlin, Dracula, the 2013 series, and Supergirl, all of them showing different sides to her acting capabilities, and I think with that in mind, she also has the presence of the Doctor, along with the fact that she's only played anti-hero to villain roles, meaning this would be something different for her, but a challenge by itself. Her Doctor is less jokey, more down-to-earth traveller, very much like 5 or 10. She's a little deceiving like 7, but she fits around places more like a companion than a typical Doctor, to make sure that she doesn't get spotted out easily. She prefers the company of companions, as she prefers to strike a conversation to keep them in her company, so that she can keep them safe. She'll have less lighter moments than Miller's Doctor, as her series is more based around a lighter tone, which represents her Doctor. The companions to follow her would be Novak from the last 2 seasons as a stepping-on point character to allow the new Doctor enough time to be settled in by viewers of the old and viewers of the new. I will say that this could be the end of him, but I think you should wait and see in case I could be lying. The TARDIS was the same as Miller's, but be slightly rebuilt because of the actions that were taken in The Evil Within, so not much would change on that part. Titles wouldn't change. I think they'd probably say the same with the fact that I like the titles that were used, but the theme would change resembling the new Doctor. So, final question. What is my overall pitch? Well, I think it's to sort of bring the show forward, but also touch on the past. The show at this point had a good run under Matt's reign, but I would like to move it forward, but not be ashamed of its past, sort of like Series 5 itself, really. However, structurally, the show is going back to 13 episodes and a special, and also the episodes will now be 60 minutes, as I feel that it allows for more moments to be placed in the episodes to have a better overall quality. And yes, please note that these are still pitches. The finished episodes could have a completely different basis and looks the writer would be assigned to that story, so there you go. So this story is the post-regeneration story with a twist. This would be dealt in this dreamscape beach type area where Katie's Doctor has just woken up from her immediate regeneration. As she lays in a lounge chair, but when trouble hits the island, she tries to act like her previous self, but something keeps editing it so that she simply can't act the same way that she used to. So she tries to act like her previous selves. But this makes it worse, almost like something is trying to wipe them out. Before the Doctor realizes if she has to survive, she has to embody her current persona as her new self, but unfortunately, even when that is done, she's now stuck with no way out. Meanwhile, we have a B story where the benefactor of the Doctor's dreamscape is due to a brain parasite that the Doctor had caught in the battle of the Evil Within without realizing that she had done so. It begins to turn the TARDIS into a sort of death trap. The only way that Romana and Novak can get rid of the brain parasite and revive the Doctor fully into their world is if they get her into the Zero Room to allow the brain parasite to escape its latches and bring the Doctor back to them. The reason why the episode would have been separated out like this is to strike a balance of the farewell to the previous Doctor. But at the end of the story, the new Doctor is finally implemented into reality, which allows Romana to leave at the end of the story, as she had done her part to allow the Doctor to come back safely through. Novak would start to falter a little now as he realizes that this new Doctor is not the same person that she used to be. So this one would be like a proper Who story. We see the planet on its total collapse. It has suffered through a battle against the Daleks and only has a few years left until it finally runs out of the resources that it needs. And then it disappears. The Doctor and Novak of course arrive, and they find it to be their job to resurrect the planet from total extinction. This is brought around when the Doctor and Novak meet the leader of the planet named Orion, who is able to tell the story of the total collapse, and we would also get flashbacks to the Dalek attack, which we later learned that a mutant is controlling one of the survivors to bring another Dalek squadron to the planet. However, the Daleks would actually only be seen in the flashbacks of the episode, as we don't need them to come back to the planet after their first attack. The mutant would have been fatally destroyed, and the Doctor would give a speech to the planet's inhabitants that includes the words, "A bright and hopeful tomorrow." Why am I pointing this out? Well, this may come into prominence later on, so keep your eyes out for that. So this one is set in 1960 America as we catch up with a family that have been reported to have been abducted by aliens in the previous summer. As it turns out not to be the case when the Doctor finds out that these stories are actually the work of a mess-up job by the Alliance of Shades, who the Doctor met a few years previously. Meanwhile, Nova actually finds the spaceship that took them. It turns out to be a spaceship of a chameleon who wants to use the planet's population to take over at a weaker time, where there would be less defensive to take them out as there would have been in their inaugural story. This episode would be one of its norm in the formula, with this case being the chameleons of the Faceless Ones along with the Alliance of Shades, who sadly faded out after their second and lackluster appearance in the Sarah Jane Adventures. Novak would also grow along in the story as he starts to take more actions towards him becoming like the Master, how the Doctor has changed, showing an eventual decline towards their friendship, which will continue into later episodes. Okay, of course I put this in. The story that I pitched for Season 8 of Widower would have to be in the series anyways. So, the story is of a man that cannot speak and cannot communicate, but hunts down people who leave the street at 7 PM. The Doctor and Novak stop more of the huntings as they find out a further secret of the man who is at the end of the street. Simply put, this episode will put the scare factor back in the series as it delivers one of its scariest elements, with the killings of the main person of the story. It's also an enclosed episode as it has the least amount of cast in a single episode of the series, with only 6 speaking characters and 1 silent one. The story would also pull along with the overarching plot of Novak's during the series as he comes to terms when his ideas almost get somebody killed. The first 2 parts of the series, and it's a good one. So the Doctor and Novak land in a shoebox-shaped spaceship as it is stopped in the middle of space. Whilst they try to initially see the problem of why they're stuck in space, the two become separated when the Vesta and Narada find a scavenger crew that are wanting to scavenge the parts from the seemingly abandoned spaceship. In this part, we follow the Doctor and the only survivor of the spaceship, Navita Palan. Navita explained that the Vesta and Narada were only being used by higher corporations in charge of the scientific experiments to try and control it to target planets, cities, and even people. But of course the corporations got too argumentative of how much power they would have had, so they stopped the experiment. Throughout the story, the Doctor and Navita find it their mission to find the original spore of the Vasta Narada, which they do, so as though they'd have to stop it from spreading, so that Novak and the others can survive. Which we find out that it has consequences in the second episode, as the Doctor is able to get back to the TARDIS first and give Navita a chance to broadcast her evidence to the corporations. She opens the doors and finds Novak, who's been waiting for a minute, as we go back to the credits. Okay, in the second episode of this 2-part, we switch to Novak's side as he's stuck with a group of scavengers. These soul scavengers tag Novak along on their journey into finding any pricey information about the spaceship, as they would already know it's abandoned and just want to extract anything so they can get their money towards it. However, the swarms of the experimental Vashta Narada are slowly trying to kill them off, one by one. By the end of the story, the leader, named Ronskol, would be the only one left, but he's too motivated by his core ideas of the money, as when Novak finds a way out, he would let the Ronskol die due to his stupidity. But after that, then we'd have the ending to episode 5, but as continued as Novak would tell the brief notes of his experience to the Doctor, but hide the fact that of his actions to Ronskol to her. Yeah, you may be asking yourself why this 2-part is different to the usual 2-parters and is more along the lines of something like Under the Lake and Before the Flood. Well, this is because I want to experiment with the formula, showing 2 different perspectives over 2 different episodes to try and give you more of a proper buff story the more time that is available. Yes, it's another historical event, and this one would actually be a holdover from the previous showrunner, Matt, who was able to give me this idea to myself in the pre-season pitching meeting, so I have to thank him for that. So the story would be that we'd follow a tribe of pigs, who are basically a group of Celts who lived in northern and eastern Scotland from around the 7th to the 10th centuries. This tribe would soon be one of the many that were being recorded as the disappearing pigs, who disappeared around 843 AD. Historically, there would have been no answer to the disappearances around the time, but I think Doctor Who's version of it would be that a batch of the bones from Flatline would take their appearances from the drawings on the stone carvings that they would take. The Doctor and Novak would arrive as the boneless now have a few more people to take as the pigs from unfamiliar enemy. Something big would happen in this story, and it'd be the culmination of the ending, where Novak is the one to finish the situation with the bonus, but at the cost of some picks. He would see that he has really gone too far towards becoming another version of the Master, that he explains to the Doctor that this has been a recurring problem since her regeneration, as he feels like he's becoming the one thing he didn't want to be, which was the ruthless and evil side to the Master. He decides to stay on Earth as he walks towards a cave that he's been having his eye on since they landed, as he sits in there, waiting until it's time to come back into the world. Yeah, so Novak leaves. The Doctor becomes companionless. Well, that's not true. During the story, we'd be introduced to the Doctor's new companion, Erin, played by Kelly MacDonald. Erin would be one of the surviving picks at the end of the story. She joins the Doctor after Novak leaves. She would have been introduced in the beginning of the story, naturally against the Doctor and Novak, to think that they was the main enemy that had been killing the group. However, she questions the Doctor and some of the talk of the events of the future, which gets the Doctor to own up as she talks about more of the future, as she's intrigued. The Doctor, seeing this, asks her to join her when she does before Novak leaves. Erin in the series is sort of the new equivalent to the companions Jamie and Leela, where she's a woman out of time, but she would be able to learn from the travels as she's on to become more of a modern person with a way to defend herself. So Erin has her first journey as a one that has her going to the future to a ring-shaped space station that has suddenly been abandoned by a previous team of space pioneers who are trying to find a miracle medicinal object that was going to be able to heal people from near health. The same journey also brings with it a second planned trip to the space station by 3 new space pioneers, which also coincides with Jade Morello, who has travelled to this point in time to make sure an outcome that he saw himself would not happen. So the Doctor, Erin and Jade make up a team to stop what is really making the main part of the space station going wild, which is the time aspect, brought on by the fact that it's operating towards a black hole. So as you've heard, yes, Time Agent Jade Morello, who was last seen in The Evil Within, is back. He would sort of be a continuing character that would make more appearances in my era, which I'm not going to tell you as of yet, where his character was somehow atone for the past sins of the Doctor, which happened in his introduction story. Also, this being Erin's first adventure, the Doctor would want to bring her along to see the future, to show how much the human race will evolve past her time and how much England is now in the current time period. Instead, she gets her first trip into space, which gives her more of a passionate goal towards learning more about space, as the Doctor will take her on more of these trips after this. By the end of the story, it would have turned out that the 3 new space pioneers would have passed on from older age with the time constraints, as the Doctor, Erin and Jade would have changed the course of the space station from it going towards a black hole to a further part of space, where it could be fully refurbished to be fully operational again. The Doctor asks Jade if he wants to come along with Erin to perhaps help her with future knowledge. He doesn't accept, saying that he has his own problems with the time agency, so he leaves without saying goodbye, but the Doctor leaves knowing that he really actually meant it. Okay, so this one follows a trip to a planet where basically after walking around, the Doctor finds a statue of her previous incarnation in the middle of town. She finds out with careful research and talkative people around the planet that she basically saved their town from oncoming forces that wanted to tear it apart, but she knows this isn't true. Also, during the episode, Erin discovers through the historical records that she isn't the first companion to travel with the Doctor, and she starts to think that maybe her time could be running out and that she may have a mortality rate. But it seems that the previous incarnation comes back the day the real Doctor has come to town, as she finds out this faker is actually a shapeshifter. The shapeshifter reveals that the reason he did it was to become a hero after they saw the Miller Doctor one day. They decided that they wanted to copy her to keep the town safe from oncoming forces, which turned out to be a murdering race named the Feekers that come for the blood of the town. The Doctor, Erin and the shapeshifter agree to team up as they stop the Feekers from returning by mixing some of the blood they have collected. Afterwards, the shapeshifter thanks the Doctor, who tells her that she is doing a good job, before Erin tells her about the morality issue, which the Doctor tells her that she promises to defend it every day that she is on board, because that is all that matters. See, I told you we'd come back. Now, if you remember that being at the end of episode 2 where the Doctor made the entitled speech, well, we return to the planet 50 years into the future, where it's rebuilt itself into an unrecognisable place with towns, cities and homes for the survivors and the generations of people that have lived, survived and have been born there. But it seems too mechanical, as nobody wants to own up to the fact where Orion is after the Doctor asks for him. First assuming that he might have died, but she eventually finds out that he's been hidden away to make sure that he wouldn't tell anybody of the town has actually been replaced by Autons. So she and Erin find out where he is hidden. With the help of Orion, they find a nesting consciousness that immediately doesn't show remorse towards the Doctor for his last attempts of taking over the Earth. Orion turns out to be a traitor who reveals himself to be an Auton and was the person who brought the planet into peace by replacing the people of the planet with the plastic duplicates that the nesting consciousness gave them. Erin finds out that the real humans are inside the nesting base by attempting to try and kill the duplicate, but she keeps him alive whilst she runs off with him chasing her behind. The Doctor edges closer to death from the nesting consciousness as Erin finds the remaining prisoners before Orion steps out first and attacks the duplicate, removing its head. The Doctor escapes as she finds them in control of the duplicate, which destroys all the fakes in the town as they melt without the leader to control them. As the Doctor and Erin leave the town in the right state it should have been, which is what the Doctor ordered at the end of episode 2, happy with her success, she enters the TARDIS as it flies off into time and space. Okay, finale time. Yes, my first one. Here's what we're going to do. So this finale is a Sontaran finale. I believe there's second one since the Invasion of the Time, and that they were only in the last 2 episodes of that one. So, the Sontarans are the villains? Well, that's cool, but what is their plan? If you remember the Sontaran stratagem where General Stahl mentioned that the Sontarans never got to be part of the Time War, well, this is where that exact idea gets flipped on its head as well, going from previous stories. The Sontarans do have possession of time travel from the previous stories that they've been in. Why wouldn't they want to break down the barriers of the Time War and change it to the design? The Doctor feels this as she starts to fade away in the console room as events start to change, where the Time War had worse effects due to the Sontarans' changes. The TARDIS keeping the Doctor semi-alive allows the Doctor to go back into the Time War to fix the changes, but it lands on the Battle of Gallifrey, in the outskirts of the planet. The Doctor strolls out as she falls to the ground with the waist down the Gallifrey, as she and Erin are taken in by a mysterious person who wakes the Doctor. As she turns out not to be fading as much as she used to be, the person unveils himself as Faylon, who has given her the biodamper that she had with Donna that keeps her from not fading. He says that he knows that the Sontarans due to some events that he was involved in, but with no time to lose, the 3 of them would enter onto the Sontaran ship as they find a way to destroy the time circuit so the Sontarans have no time travel capabilities back to their present. The Doctor decides that this is a thing she's got to do herself. She seals herself into the Sontaran command center with the main command batch of Sontarans. Giving them a chance to surrender, she destroys the time circuits, transporting everyone in the TARDIS as the Sontarans have captured it, whilst the Doctor, Erin and Faylon have arrived on board their ship. Back into the future as the Doctor leaves the Sontarans to go back to Sontar, shamed. However, the fact that the Time War still being time-locked, Faylon no longer has a home to go to, so the Doctor invites him on board as a thanks, which he obviously accepts as they enter the TARDIS, and well, the rest of this will be continued in episode 13, but now we should divert to talk about this newest companion. So, Faylon. Faylon is basically our Time Lord companion, sort of like Romana was when she was around. And later we find out a different person in the past, but basically when we meet Faylon in episodes 11 and 12, it's only been a day after his regeneration, with him being killed by the invading Sontarans, who saw him as a threat despite the fact that he wasn't one. Yes, unlike many Time Lords during the Time War, Faylon would have been the unlucky ones to escape the battle, and well, try to live a life of peace, whilst overseeing the planet's destruction from the Time War, which is why it was sort of helpful that the Doctor's actions in episodes 11 and 12 take him away from the events and take him on a different journey. While Erin's of course the one branded by the acts of violence of her past to take more of a path towards peace, Faylon would be the opposite, where violence becomes more of a choice to him than for in this new incarnation. As mentioned before, he was killed by Sontarans and made to regenerate, but for trying to find a peaceful way to trying to get them to stop, destroying his home and, well, to basically leave. Now you may be thinking, why wasn't the last 2 episodes the finale episodes? Well, I shall explain by using Star Trek TNG. So, TNG at the beginning of Season 4 had finished its epic 2-parter, The Best of Both Worlds, and guess what followed it? Yeah, an episode mainly about Picard having to slow down because the show needed it. It needed it because it would have felt really out of place if they had just ignored the events right after it's finished. So the idea here would be that it would take place after the newly formed trio take off in the TARDIS at the end of the previous episode. The Doctor, having taken more of the violent route but past a decision last episode, takes herself to somewhere familiar as she lands the TARDIS in this familiar separate dimension where she visits the Solar Tract, which would be represented by the image of Cameron Kamara's Sophie. Whilst that is going on, Faylon asks Erin to take him to the TARDIS library to learn about more of the end of the Time War, since he can never go back to his home, so he doesn't know the ending. Erin warns him that he shouldn't, because like she did in episode 9, she learned more about the morality timeline that she has, and it's changed her. He says to her that he doesn't need the warning, as he wants to know to choose his own path. He arrives in the library as he spots the big book, The History of the Time War, which he pinpoints to the events he was last in, and reads from the pages onwards, learning about the horror that took place after he left, and how much hopeful that he wasn't part of, but was also horrified to find the decisions that the higher people took that were so ruthless, and were not of the time of old, that even he doesn't know where he stands, or should have stood in the first place. Erin walks in to find him sitting, thinking to himself about what he should do as Erin takes a seat beside him as she asks him about his past, which he agrees to go on to as she coerces him into a state where he's not lost for words. He tells her that he used to be known for his tight wit and bound knowledge, who wasn't a person of violence, seeing that he felt for the violent acts that they were going to commit would cause more death and destruction, so he stayed on the planet and became a hermit. Faylon comes to the terms that his past is now behind him and now he can start anew with his new incarnation. Erin agrees as she vows to help in any way she can. He subsequently asks if she could give him weapon training, which she questions because she comes from more of a primitive time than him. He tells her that even her more primitive weapons are still alien to him, showing that start of a simple connection between them. Afterwards, the Doctor comes in and asks if they want to go somewhere else, as she's finished with her business with the Solar Tract. Erin asks her about her experience, but she dodges the question for a reason. We find out, of course, that the real reason was because the Solar Tract warned her that something familiar is coming, even though she wouldn't know when it would be coming. So ends the main part of the series. But we do have one more story to go. Christmas, yes. After its absence from Season D, of course, I wouldn't forfeit the right for more of them, so here's my first one. Well, what is it this time? Well, one man in the world despises Christmas. His name's Noah Cameron, and all he would like for his Christmas presents for this year would be Christmas not to exist anymore. Luckily, a new neighbour of his named Mary Dargett that he helps out overhears the idea as Noah goes back to his house ready to bear another Christmas. But the next day, Christmas Eve, Noah wakes up to essentially have the keys to the kingdom as he magically has become Prime Minister, and Christmas has been outlawed, which has caused people to cower in fear. The Doctor would be involved with these events, from Mary sending a holographic message saying that she would been sent from the Shadow Proclamation to tell the Doctor especially to stay away from Earth, as they have a situation that's under control. Obviously, being the Doctor, she brings herself and her companions to sort the mess out. They land and find out, of course, that everything's worse for some reason, which they find out by doing the smart thing and take themselves to the leader. They get themselves taken to the first Secretary of State, which turns out to be Mary. The Doctor orders to have a meeting with Mary as Erin and Faylon roam around 10 down the street to find Noah tied up and stuck in a cupboard as they untie him. He tells them that before he was shut in, he saw a copy of himself in the Prime Minister's clothes. As he, Erin and Faylon go to the room where Mary and the Doctor is, as they burst in on the meeting, as Noah explains that he's not responsible for any of this, and Mary has copied him. She orders the copy of Noah to come to the room as a copy of Noah unzips his head to reveal it's a Raxacorical Valvatorian. The Doctor, her companions, and Noah split up as the Doctor takes Noah back to the TARDIS as Erin and Faylon try to find a way to trap the Raxacorical Valvatorian and neutralize it. Mary decides to chase after the Doctor and Noah as she gets herself inside the TARDIS and orders the Doctor to go to a simple date, December the 24th, 1987, where she kills Noah. The Doctor awkwardly accepts as they land. Mary escapes as she hijacks a car. The Doctor and Noah do the same as they follow Mary, who seems to be heading towards a similar street to the one at the beginning of the story, as she swerves the car into crashing before the Doctor takes out her tyres, making Mary crash. The two get out as the Doctor goes to Mary, as Mary orders the Doctor to kill her, which the Doctor does not, but instead sends a teleport link to the real Shadow Proclamation to arrest her. Noah has brought the two people out of the first car crash as he calls up the health service on one of the victims' phones, before getting back into the car with the Doctor. He tells her that it was all his fault to begin with, as she told Mary that he hated Christmas, but never said why, as he explains that the accident that he saved those two people were his parents, and this was the day they died, which causes hate towards Christmas. He thanks the Doctor before fading from the passenger seat. Basically, afterwards, the present world would revert back to normal as Erin and Faylon arrive where the TARDIS last landed, to which it returns. The Doctor arrives saying that everything is sorted and asks the two of them if they want to go back into time and space. The two of them instead ask the Doctor to come join them in the present day as they take a walk towards London to have a Merry Christmas of their own. Thanks to everybody who helped me on this project, and well, everyone in the channel in general. It's been a hard task trying to continue this job Matt had, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Now, if I've been keeping to an earlier script, I would be saying that the next video would be a review of the Christmas special, but that's the thing with time. You never know what's really going to happen. And for the next one of these, expected February. But expect some great stuff between now and then. Anyways, goodbye.